Hi, everybody, and welcome to this quick 30-minute webinar on strategic storytelling and how you can be successful with your business storytelling, things you need to know to build your storytelling skills. So let me get my PowerPoint presentation up so I can share that on the screen with you. So let's see. I'm getting there. All right. There we go. All right, so here we are. Now then, who am I? Well, my name is Karen Dietz. I'm the best-selling author of Business Storytelling for Dummies. I'm also a TEDx speaker. I've been doing storytelling in business for so long before we could call it business storytelling. So I'm one of the originals in the field, and I have decades of experience that I'm going to share with you today about what I've discovered that works in building your storytelling skills. So here's what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over a little bit about why storytelling works. Not so much, just a little bit. We're going to talk about why most storytelling workshops fail, so you can avoid them, and also some essential mind shifts that you're going to need to make for success in building your storytelling skills. I'll talk about a story system that will help get you results, how to craft one for yourself, and then the simple steps to get you started. So why storytelling? Well, I could probably talk for hours on why storytelling works in business. But I thought it was really interesting because a few months ago, somebody called me up. It was a business owner, and he told me he absolutely knew that developing business storytelling skills was essential for him as a way for him to grow his business. And then he said to me, but Karen, really all I want to know is give me the formula for how to craft a compelling story. Because once I know the formula, I know I'll master storytelling. Well, I kind of laughed because, well, let's face it, if you wanted to learn how to paint, if you wanted to learn how to play a musical instrument, if you wanted to learn to play football, if you wanted to develop any kind of a skill, then you would never ask somebody for a formula and say, if I know the formula, oh, now I know I will be successful. It just doesn't work that way. And so it's the same way with the business storytelling. It's not a list of essential elements that you could check off. It's not a formula that you fill out. It really is a skill that you develop over time. The neuroscience of storytelling, I mean, I could share lots of stories with you about how and why this works, but in a nutshell, we are experiencing a lot of great research these last few years. From neuroscience, they're taking brain scans of what happens to a storyteller when they're telling a story and what happens to a listener when they're listening to a story. And the bottom line here is that there is what they call neurocoupling that happens. And this neurocoupling is when the storyteller's brain and the listener's brain entrain. They connect immediately and they entrain really fast. And all the same areas of the brain in both the teller's and the listener's brains are lit up. And they've measured how long it takes for this neural coupling to happen. And it's only 1 to 2 seconds. So storytelling creates an immediate connection. Very often, because the imagination and all these sensory parts of our brain are triggered, it's very easy for us to see ourselves in the story. The stories often relate to a personal experience or we can remember a personal experience that's similar to the one that's being shared with us in the story, and we put ourselves right in that story that we are listening to. A couple months ago when I was delivering a workshop, there were a number of people who even said, oh no, when you were talking about the poet and as he was walking down the street, I became that poet. I was looking out through his eyes. And that I found really astounding. I mean, that's how much that these people got into the story. Because stories kind of operate the way they do, they're memorable. And I'm sure we've all had experiences where we've heard a story from somebody and we could easily turn around and tell it to somebody else later in our own particular way. So stories are both memorable and repeatable. Stories actually create empathy. They build our empathy and our emotional intelligence muscles. And again, tons of research has shown that stories are your fastest and most powerful way to build your empathy and emotional intelligence skills. And of course, stories, we always make them meaningful for ourselves. At least we try to. And great stories help people, help the listeners create a great takeaway for themselves. So that's also really important. And again, 7 areas of the brain are activated when we tell a story. There are probably more areas that are activated, but we've been able to chart 7 up till now. What's really interesting is that when we hear data and information, only 2 areas of our brain are activated. And that's the language centers of the brain, which is the Broca's brain and Wernicke's area. So storytelling is a much more, it's a whole brain, whole body experience, actually. So that's what's going on around the neuroscience of storytelling and why storytelling works. Because don't we want to be memorable? Don't we want people to repeat our stories outside of our presence? That's word of mouth marketing, by the way. Don't we want to develop greater empathy skills? Because that's what builds deeper relationships and connections. And meaning, we're all about meaning today, striving for meaning. So storytelling can really help us in that. So when it comes to influence engagement and moving people to action, obviously effective storytelling is your most valuable asset. You know, it's been around 100,000 plus years, and it stayed that long because it really works. And so why wouldn't you want to leverage storytelling in your business so that you can grow your impact and your influence and your income? It's now considered a 21st century core competency. For all of these reasons, growing influence and inspiration, enrolling people in your vision, gaining alignment, winning those talent wars, attracting the right people to work with you, and keeping those people, improving empathy and emotional intelligence, like I've already said, and increasing engagement in today's world where engagement is at an all-time low. And being able to make a difference in the world, very much so. Because your ability to make a difference, particularly if you have a social mission, storytelling is absolutely the way to go. So let's continue on. So clients have, when they're working on storytelling, have moved into receiving standing ovation when they're speaking, but even better, my measure of success in the speaking arena is, do you have people lined up to chat with you afterwards, right? And that's what my clients experience. And then there's all kinds of ways to apply storytelling to your organization. Now, you know, Lakeland Hospital, they were a medical group. They launched a storytelling project so that they could increase their patient satisfaction scores. And they were focusing on capturing the stories when people were delivering compassionate care. It took 6,000 stories, but only 90 days. I mean, those 2 figures are remarkable to me. 6,000 stories in 90 days, okay? And where for years they've not been able to move the needle on their very low patient satisfaction scores, they moved those scores up to the 90th percentile. Yeah, after 6,000 stories in 90 days. And then sales is another great place for storytelling. There's an example of called the Significant Objects Project, where researchers bought, garage sale items for 99 cents, maybe a little over $1. And they wondered, what would happen if we attached a personal story to these? Would we be able to sell them more quickly, or would we be able to sell them at a higher price? Right? Inquiring minds wanted to know. So that's what they did. They tested it out, and one of their items was a 99-cent statue of a horse's head. One of the researchers wrote a personal story about it, and they put it up on eBay. Sure enough, it sold pretty quickly, but it just didn't sell for like $2 more, $5 more. No, it sold for $67 more. That's a 6,000+% price increase. That's astounding. And it may sound outlandish, but we see these kinds of percentages happen again and again. Now, in your sales situation, when you're applying stories to grow your business, will you experience a 6,000% price increase? I don't know. I kind of doubt it. But, my experience is that 10%, 20%, 50%, 75%, we would be ecstatic with those. And that is all in the range of possibility. So definitely storytelling brings about significant results, and who wouldn't want that? I do want to share with you that there are 3 levels of storytelling, and very few people talk about this, but let's go through these really quickly. So the first level is transactional storytelling, and this is where most people start with storytelling in business. And transactional storytelling is, here, I'll tell you a story and you buy my product. And people get good results from that. Unfortunately, it doesn't last, that long. People, your clients start catching on pretty quickly about that. So you can do it for a little while, but then you really have to move into social storytelling, which is how to work with stories back and forth with your customers and your clients so that you deepen the connection and deepen the relationship. And that's what clients and customers are really looking for, is that social kind of storytelling. And then the third level is transformational storytelling. Now, all of my clients experience personal transformations when they're working on their stories. There are 2 other kinds of transformation that happen, and that's transformation in small groups and then transformation in larger groups or in the community. Now, not everybody is interested in those latter kinds of transformation, but if you have a social mission that you're trying to get accomplished in your business, then learning the skills and the methods and processes for these kinds of transformations to occur is going to be important to you. So let's go through why most storytelling workshops fail and what to do about it. So what happens when storytelling workshops don't work that well? Well, first of all, the main focus of the workshop was just on story crafting. Story crafting is really only about 20% of all of the work that you're going to do in storytelling. And you'll always be crafting stories, of course, but the time it takes to develop those story crafting skills, that can happen pretty quickly. But if you're only focusing on story crafting, you're missing out on all of the social and transformational aspects of business storytelling, and you're not going to be able to leverage what you're doing to its maximum effect. Typically, there's no story strategy or story development system in place when these kinds of workshops happen. There's lots of information shared, but there's very little or no ongoing practice sessions. And often these workshops are not tied to real work or measures, right? How do you measure your progress so that you know you're being successful? So the results. This is what I hear when I work with clients or I go into an organization who've had maybe a storytelling workshop or 2. oh, we tried storytelling here, but it didn't work. Or, what storytelling workshop? We had a storytelling workshop? Oh, I don't remember much about it. I liked it, but I'm not sure how to use it. Or, I haven't had much chance to put it to use. So all of these are very common. But you know, what that tells me is that a lot of time, money, and resources have been wasted. And basically nothing has changed. Like, life stays the same. So there may be a desire to build those storytelling skills, but in reality, it doesn't happen. So let's talk about what is required to create storytelling success. First, I'm going to talk about a few mind shifts. Now, there are a lot of mind shifts to make when you're building your storytelling skills. I'm going to talk about the top 3. And then we'll talk about how to bring a storytelling strategy and process into play for yourself so you have a clear path to know what exactly the skills you need to build in storytelling. So, mind shift number 1. Storytelling is an experience. It's not a checklist. It's not a form to fill out. It's not a template to follow. Really, storytelling is an experience, and you are delivering an experience to people when you are sharing a story. So you have to start asking yourself, what experience do you want people to have? And you have to start designing your stories from an experiential level, not from a let's check off the boxes on the list. And then the second part to think about is, what stories do you want them to tell about you? And so if we start entertaining those questions, all of a sudden our storytelling skills start improving automatically. And it takes practice, right? Crafting stories and delivering stories just takes practice. You know, every great storyteller will tell you that the only way to really build your storytelling skills is to tell lots and lots of stories. So you are going to want to, before I go there, I'll go back. So you're going to want to think carefully first before you start building your storytelling skills about building in those practice sessions and how you're going to do that. It's like going to a gym, building those storytelling muscles. The second mind shift is to know that storytelling is a pull technology. Yeah, I don't even like the word storytelling. Right? And I've been working in this field for a few decades. I don't like it because it creates a picture in our minds of somebody standing up in front of a group and telling them things. So that's essentially pushing messages to people. Storytelling, however, is not a push technology. Because remember when I was talking about the neuroscience of storytelling and what happens to the brain and how the brain's entrained? Storytelling is a pull technology. When we share a story, we pull people into our world and we pull people towards us. And then when stories are shared together in groups, people are pulled towards each other. So it's pretty critical to make the shift away from messaging into pulling. This will also help you create those better storytelling experiences that you want to deliver for people. The third mind shift is actually story listening. It's really not so much the stories you tell. Oftentimes it's more important the stories that you listen to. Now there are definite behaviors, attitudes, and techniques for doing really great story listening. And what that leads us to is asking yourself the question, it's not so much the story you want to tell, but what is the story that I can tell that invites people in. And even before that, maybe it's the question, what's the story that you need to deliberately evoke from someone else in order for you to make that connection and deepen the relationship? So most executives that I work with, they are surprised to find that yes, they're doing storytelling, but they are doing far more story listening than the telling. And this is a huge leverage point for deepening relationships and growing your business. So let's talk a few minutes about designing your program and what those essential elements are. If you want to build your storytelling skills, what do you need to know to get started? Well, the first thing you need to know is it'd be great if you could do an assessment. Right? And at the end of this program, I'll talk to you about how you can, I'll give you the link to do a story skills assessment that I have. The assessment allows you to measure the gap between where you do have talent with storytelling and where you have some areas you need to strengthen, right? Not everybody is great across the board at storytelling. We all have areas that we need to strengthen. And oh, by the way, I still work with my story coaches today, and I still take workshops today because I'm continually focused on honing my craft, right? So the gap and knowing the gap is really important so that you can start developing a strategy for how to build your storytelling skills. So the strategy is the map, right? First thing you have to figure out to make a map, besides the gap, you need to figure out your goals. What do you want to accomplish with business storytelling? You know, pick 2, maybe 3 goals max, right? So that you can then, once you have the map of where you want to go, you can start putting the plan together, which is designing your storytelling program. And depending on the skills you need to develop and the goals you're trying to achieve, then the plan is how are you specifically going to get there? What specific kinds of workshops do you need to take? What specific kinds of coaching do you need to have, right? So you can build those skills in focused and fast ways. And then you launch into just working it, right? This is when you're taking those workshops and you're doing that coaching, you're engaged in that coaching, and you're actually building those skills. But then another part of the component that you absolutely want to design for in the very beginning is how are you going to measure your progress? You know, what are the results that you want and how do you know that those results have shown up? So what are those measures that you can put in place so that you know you are building your storytelling skills? And of course, these measures are often left off of most storytelling programs. So we're kind of left in the dark sometimes. So let's go through the 5 steps for building your storytelling skills and your program. Well, the first one is, of course, as we just said, to build your strategy, which is understanding the gap, making the map, putting the plan together, and then putting your measures together. The second step is to build your stories. Right? So there are 7 core stories that every person needs to tell about themselves and their business. So you have to craft those. But it's not only the crafting of those, it's also the delivery of those. Because, and we all know, we can write a great story down, but then being able to tell it live in front of people, it's a whole different experience. So we must practice the delivery and get really good at that so we can nail it every single time. What are your signature stories? Really quick here. I'll do a whole nother webinar on your signature stories. But to give you the list right now, it's your origin story, how you got started in business. Your people and results stories. This is where your customers are your heroes, your staff are your heroes, your vendors are heroes. It's a great way to brag on all 3 populations there. You have product and service stories, which is how a product or service came to be. Your values and action stories. You know, we all have business values. Sometimes they're on a piece of paper or maybe stuck on a wall. But these kinds of stories actually demonstrate how you live your values. It's values in action. The why I stories. You know, your customers want to be able to depend on you. They want to know what motivates you so that when the going gets tough, you keep going. And so the why I story is very, very important for continuing to deepen and lengthen that relationship with your customers. Failure stories, that's a whole nother category. These are tricky stories to tell. You have to figure out how to tell them, and then you have to figure out when to tell them. And so that takes a little bit of work there. And then your last story is your future story. This takes the longest time to develop because you really have to think deeply about what are you and your customers doing today that is creating a better future for tomorrow. Right? So that's some deep thinking that goes on there. So the third step is to build your story influence skills. So you've crafted your stories, you've worked on your delivery skills. Now it's how do you really leverage story listening and story sharing. Right? So part of what I do is I drop storytelling with my clients, and we move into story sharing. And we start leveraging those dynamics and build those skills and attitudes and behaviors to do that really well. Because it's all about deepening relationships and keeping clients loyal to you. We know it's so much easier to keep a current client than it is to continually find new ones. So this is where your story listening and story sharing skills really come into play. And then the fourth step is to include transformational storytelling. Of course, it's the personal transformation that you're going to experience by working on your stories. And then if you have a social mission, there's the transformation of the teams that can happen, transformation of business culture that can happen, transformation of the community, right? So an important component to include into your plan for building your story skills. And not everybody wants to do the transformation of teams, culture, community, and that's fine, but for sure that personal transformation is going to happen. So kind of think about it beforehand and start planning for that. And then step 5, right? Look for programs that contain these elements. You want hands-on experiential skill building, not a bunch of talking about it, right? Sharing information. You want to actually be doing it. You want practice sessions where you're practicing your delivery. It's really, really important. You want personal goal setting. What are your personal goals? What are you really trying to achieve? Group coaching is phenomenal. And this will, again, accelerate your story skills because the more you hear people in a group share their stories, you learn a whole variety of different ways you can craft and deliver a story. So again, learning gets accelerated. You want real work situations. You know, sometimes I've gone to storytelling workshops and I've been crafting stories that are more imaginative or working off of folk tales, and that's good. But then I come back and I go, okay, now how am I going to apply that to work? It's so much easier if we're in business. Let's include real work situations and build our storytelling skills around those so we can practice in real time and with real life situations. And then auditing your progress. You definitely want programs that talk about auditing your progress and how to do that and help set up those successful measures for yourself. So ultimately then, what's the opportunity? Well, standout storytelling that absolutely gets results. So, you know, we don't have a chat box in this particular webinar, but write down, right, on a piece of paper as you're listening to this, you know, what's an insight that you're walking away with? We've talked about why storytelling works. We've talked about mindsets. We've talked about kind of components of a good program. We've talked about what doesn't work a little bit. And we've talked about some steps that you can take, right, for building a good storytelling program. So what insight are you taking away with you from our time together today? And ask a question. Like if any of this has sparked a question, send me an email afterwards. I'll be happy to respond and help you as best I can. So after this recording is done, within 24 hours, you'll receive the link to the recording so you can listen to this. You'll also receive a link to a storytelling skills assessment that you can take, so help you measure that gap. And then I've got a story skills map that you can use also. These are a few more specific things that you're going to want to pay attention to in building your storytelling skills. My email is there, and my phone number too, so please call me or contact me if you want to talk more. I do have 2 programs that I'm offering to help you build your storytelling skills. One is a VIP day. It's a 6-hour intensive with me where we assess your storytelling skills, right? And we do some live coaching, but we really focus on creating your goals and putting a plan together. So we've developed the whole strategy, the whole map, the whole plan for how to build your skills as it pertains to your business and where you are today in your business and what you want to accomplish. And this plan, this strategy that you'll walk away with lasts, for the next 6 months to a year. And it also includes 2 story coaching sessions after our 1 day together. So it's an intensive day, but wow, it's a great day. You walk away with a lot of goodies. And then I also offer a 6-month coaching program where we actually craft your signature stories and we practice delivering them. And we do this all connected to the goals that you want to achieve. So it's tied to real work situations. All right. So that's it for now. I do want to say that there is a whole nother piece of storytelling that I've been developing for the last year, and that's all about data storytelling. And companies, now this might not pertain to you, but so many companies are being driven by big data these days, and the ability to tell that data story needs help. Right? So we need to find out how to drive business value with that data and communicate the insights effectively. And I've got another webinar next week, another 30-minute free webinar just focused on this topic. So if you're interested, come join us. And I'll be sending out notices to everybody about it also. All right. So back to that one. Thank you all so much for your time and attention today. I hope you walked away with some valuable knowledge and insights and a way to move forward confidently in building your storytelling skills. Email me, call me. I'd love to talk with you. And thanks so much. Have a great day and have a great weekend coming up. Bye-bye for now.